Before you continue reading, you may encounter a question that has the potential to transform your perception of the world around you. Do you ever wonder if showing kindness automatically guarantees safety? Do you sincerely believe that a good heart serves as reliable protection? Do you trust that boundless generosity fosters unwavering loyalty and that unconditional honesty invariably earns universal respect? If you answered yes to even one of these profound questions, then the truth about the most dangerous illusion ever imposed by society is about to be revealed. The key mistake many make lies in the unshakable conviction that being kind means being completely safe. However, there is a harsh and uncompromising reality. Kindness, contrary to popular belief, can be likened to an all-consuming fire. It can mercilessly incinerate everything a person has painstakingly built. Their relationships, professional career, most cherished dreams, literally everything they valued and constructed. Niccolo Machiavelli. It was this eminent thinker, Niccolo Machiavelli, who grasped the profound depth of this truth. He witnessed how kind leaders crumbled, how benevolent rulers were ruthlessly destroyed. He observed how generous people were betrayed by the very individuals they extended a helping hand to, and he meticulously documented all these observations in his writings. Today, his hidden wisdom will be unveiled, the shocking, unspoken price of kindness. Soon, the reader will discover why their own kindness, contrary to expectations, actually makes them vulnerable, why others don't respect their good-heartedness, but rather exploit it shamelessly. And most significantly, how to transform kindness from their greatest vulnerability into their most formidable weapon. First and foremost, one crucial aspect needs clarification. The author is not advocating for you to become evil or to intentionally inflict harm upon others. On the contrary, the goal is to demonstrate how to express kindness not blindly, but strategically, with an awareness of the consequences. For the harsh reality is this: in a world teeming with predators akin to wolves, remaining a naive sheep means condemning oneself to being devoured alive. From this moment forward, everything will undergo a radical change. You will no longer apply kindness thoughtlessly by instinct. Instead, you will learn to use it strategically with a clear understanding of your objective. This discussion will reveal in detail why kindness does not always serve as reliable protection. Moreover, it often leads to destructive consequences, and it will clearly demonstrate how to transform it into a genuine source of unshakable strength. Let's turn to the first, truly shocking truth. Point 1. Kindness as an overwhelming vulnerability. Consider the kindest person you know. Then ask yourself a profound question. Does this person truly command sincere respect, or are they merely someone invariably approached whenever a need arises? Indeed, excessive kindness often fails to provide protection. Instead, it exposes a person to vulnerability. When someone consistently displays exceptional gentleness and a willingness to concede, others quickly begin to perceive them as a predictable figure. It becomes evident that such a person is unlikely to actively resist or object. They learn that a categorical no is improbable from them. As a result, this incessant kindness, sometimes bordering on spinelessness, transforms into a tool for manipulation, as the individual, being too soft, proves incapable of resisting such pressure. Such a person risks becoming a kind of scapegoat, or, as they say, an office doormat, that friend who invariably pays for shared dinners, or the family member always ready to help, even if it comes at the expense of their own interests. As a vivid illustration, consider the story of a person who was, by all accounts, an outstanding team leader. He tirelessly supported his subordinates, always defended their interests, and prioritized their needs above all else, demonstrating truly exemplary dedication. And what was the outcome of such selflessness? Against all expectations, a promotion went to another employee, not him. The reason for this lies in the fact that overly accommodating and always compliant individuals are often not perceived as true leaders. Rather, their image in the eyes of others is closer to that of an executive servant than an authoritative figure capable of leading a team. Others often do not hold due respect for someone's kindness. Instead, they are prone to actively exploit it. One should reflect on this paradoxical truth. When a person is constantly ready to help, their assistance gradually loses its value over time, becoming devalued in the eyes of those to whom it is offered. If someone consistently refuses to set personal boundaries, people will inevitably violate them, testing the limits of what is permissible. And when an individual never demonstrates their strength or resolve, others easily conclude that they simply possess none. Thus, kindness devoid of firmness transforms into an obvious weakness, sending an unambiguous signal to the world that this person can be freely taken advantage of. The renowned thinker Machiavelli once observed, "A lion cannot protect himself from traps, and a fox cannot defend himself from wolves. Therefore, one must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten away wolves." Similarly, if someone attempts to survive in this dangerous world by remaining a defenseless sheep among a pack of wolves, they condemn themselves to constant suffering and hardship. Now let's move on to the second significant issue, which can be termed the trap of generosity. There is another aspect that may seem quite surprising to many. The more person tends to give to others, the more paradoxical their perception of this generosity becomes. Its value in their eyes gradually diminishes. At first glance, this statement may seem completely illogical, but it is worth listening more carefully to its justification. Initially, an act of generosity undoubtedly elicits fervent, albeit short-lived, applause. People applaud such an individual, utter many kind words in their praise, and tell everyone what a wonderful and magnanimous person they are. This, without a doubt, creates a sense of something amazing and pleasant. However, over time, something truly perverse begins to manifest in the dynamic of such relationships. Excessive generosity, instead of strengthening good connections, gradually fosters dependency, cultivates a sense of entitlement, and ultimately leads to resentment. The explanation for this phenomenon lies in the following mechanism. When someone helps another person just once, they typically experience genuine gratitude. If the help is repeated twice, a feeling of deep appreciation arises. But help 10 times, and the recipients begin to perceive this assistance as something self-evident, as their due. The exceptional kindness of the giver becomes a customary norm for them. The moment a person, for whatever reason, stops helping, their previous 9 acts of agreement will be forgotten. Only that single instance when no was uttered will remain in memory. Suddenly, the once generous benefactor transforms in their eyes into an egoist, becoming the bad guy in this distorted narrative. At times, despite the best intentions, a person risks becoming the bad guy in the eyes of others. Consider a situation where parents constantly spoil their children, fulfilling their every wish. Initially, of course, the little ones experience genuine joy and express their appreciation for every blessing bestowed. However, over time, as such generosity becomes commonplace, these gestures are no longer perceived as exceptional, transforming into something taken for granted. For example, acquiring a new smartphone no longer elicits the same excitement. It is merely perceived as a routine action characteristic of parents. And if for some reason the parents refuse a subsequent purchase, the children immediately display anger and accuse them of unfairness. Similar patterns of behavior are observed in interpersonal relationships, particularly within a circle of friends. Imagine someone who invariably takes on paying the bill for a shared dinner, constantly acts as a driver for their acquaintances, or is always ready to help with a move. Initially, of course, their kindness is met with appreciation, and words of gratitude are regularly heard. However, over time, as such behavior becomes habitual, the expression of appreciation gradually fades. Others begin to take such readiness to help for granted, automatically, assuming that this person will always handle any task. And the saddest part is, if they suddenly need a reciprocal favor or support, their friends unexpectedly turn out to be extremely busy, citing urgent matters. Such a state of affairs can rightfully be called the trap of excessive generosity. A person continues to give and give until their boundless readiness to help becomes an integral part of their personality, their calling card. And at that critical moment when they themselves require reciprocal support, or simply decide to cease their continuous string of benefactions, they suddenly find themselves in the role of antagonist, the villain in the eyes of those they helped for so long. The paradox is that tireless generosity does not cultivate true devotion or loyalty. On the contrary, it fosters deep dependency. People begin to perceive another's kindness as their inherent resource, becoming completely reliant on manifestations of this generosity. And much like an addict reacts to the cessation of their usual supply, they experience fury and indignation when their source runs dry. Beneath this complex social phenomenon lies a deep psychological pattern. In psychology, there is a concept known as hedonic adaptation. Its essence lies in the human brain's remarkable ability to quickly adapt to favorable conditions and positive stimuli. What was once perceived as exceptional and unique eventually becomes an everyday norm. Similarly, an act initially regarded as a manifestation of extraordinary generosity gradually transforms into something expected and taken for granted. Thus, repeated and regular displays of kindness gradually lose their original significance and impact. They become virtually imperceptible to others, blending into the background of daily life, as their frequency makes them too commonplace and lacking in novelty. However, one only needs to refuse help once or deviate from habitual behavior for that single refusal to instantly stand out from the rest, attracting universal attention like a bright red flag. It is this solitary instance that becomes ingrained in people's memory, becoming the object of their scrutiny and the main reason for discontent and complaints. This phenomenon is observed everywhere, encompassing various aspects of human life and interaction. For example, in a professional environment, if an employee regularly stays late at work, their overtime hours eventually cease to be perceived as extraordinary, becoming a customary norm. No one expresses gratitude for this extra effort anymore. However, should this employee once leave work at the appointed time, their dedication to the job is immediately called into question. A similar situation unfolds in personal relationships. If one partner constantly makes concessions and compromises, such behavior gradually begins to be perceived as expected. But should they once show firmness and insist on their point of view, they are immediately labeled a difficult or uncompromising person. Niccolo Machiavelli, as is well known, once declared, benefits should be conferred gradually, and then they will be better appreciated. This insightful thinker grasped a profound truth that has remained inaccessible to most people for centuries. It is scarcity that creates true value, while abundance relentlessly destroys it. His approach to distributing favors was always strategically calculated. Number 3 in this series of principles, the mask of virtue. There is an unpleasant truth that can cause some discomfort. Public opinion tends to trust appearance more than genuine reality. For people, it's not so important whether someone is truly kind deep down. What matters far more is how good they look in the eyes of others. They don't seek to judge the purity of the heart. Their verdict is based on external image. This means that to maintain power and secure respect, an individual must wear a mask of kindness while retaining full control over the situation beneath this benevolent surface. If you look closely at the most successful individuals known to society, a question arises. Did they achieve their heights by being genuinely kind to everyone without exception? The answer is unequivocally no. Their success was the result of a wise and calculated approach to when, how, and to whom precisely to display their kindness. Such individuals know how to smile brilliantly in public, yet make the most difficult and sometimes unpopular decisions in the solitude of their offices. They show mercy when it promises them a strategic advantage, and they demonstrate unyielding strength when circumstances demand it. They are well aware that the appearance of virtue possesses far greater power than virtue itself in its pure, unmanifested form. This is not about mere pretense or hypocrisy. Rather, it is evidence of a deep strategic approach to managing perception. Allow me to give an example. A surgeon may have to make an incision in a patient's body to save their life. Would you call this doctor cruel? By no means. The doctor does what is absolutely necessary, even if that action causes temporary pain. True leaders understand that sometimes being truly good means temporarily appearing bad in the eyes of others. Sometimes helping someone involves a refusal, a firm no. Sometimes protecting one's team requires making extremely unpopular decisions. The mask of virtue is not deception, but rather a matter of precise timing. It is knowing when to show one's soft, compassionate side and when to show firmness and resolve. Most people, unfortunately, understand this principle in reverse. They demonstrate their weakness to enemies and their strength to friends. Wise people, however, do exactly the opposite. Machiavelli once articulated this by saying, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." He deeply understood that perception shapes reality in the minds of the masses. If society perceives an individual as weak, then over time they may indeed feel that way. Conversely, if others see them as a strong personality, this often contributes to strengthening their inner power and confidence. Thus, a person can actively influence their own image in the eyes of others. Number 4, the economy of power. Every action a person takes carries a certain cost, be it material or energetic. This applies to every favor they grant, every agreement given against an inner desire to refuse, and every moment spent helping others instead of their own development. Most kind-hearted people rarely consider this, giving of themselves without reservation until they have nothing left. Subsequently, they are left bewildered as to why they feel completely drained, resentful, and used. Here's what is extremely important to realize. Everyone's time, energy, and resources are limited. When these valuable assets are spent on others, inevitably less remains for oneself. Acknowledging this fact is by no means a manifestation of selfishness, it is pure mathematics. Boundless, uncontrolled kindness leads to the depletion of internal strength. And when a person is completely exhausted, they become incapable of helping anyone, including themselves. Recall the safety instructions on an airplane. Passengers are always told to put on their own oxygen mask first, and only then help others. Why is that? Because if a person loses consciousness trying to save someone else first, then two people will need saving instead of one. Life operates on a similar principle. If an individual completely depletes themselves by endlessly helping others, they themselves eventually become the one in need of help. In such a situation, they become a burden, not a valuable resource. Wise people understand perfectly that to successfully survive and thrive, one's resources and energy must be carefully guarded and rationally utilized. This approach does not make a person evil or callous. On the contrary, it makes them resilient and capable of long-term functioning. Many learn this important lesson through their own bitter experience. For years, a person may unhesitatingly say yes to everyone, every request, every favor, every quick question that subsequently turns into hours of painstaking work. They may mistakenly believe they are acting correctly and nobly. However, what actually happens? Over time, resentment towards people begins to accumulate within them. They feel anger and bitterness. Their own projects suffer from a lack of attention, and their personal dreams are postponed indefinitely. And ironically, they become less capable of effectively helping those who truly need it. It is at such moments that something extremely important comes to light. Constantly agreeing to all the requests of others effectively means abandoning oneself. And when a person abandons themselves, they ultimately abandon the possibility of truly helping everyone else. Truly magnanimous figures in human history were not those who unconditionally agreed to every request or offer. On the contrary, they were individuals who firmly rejected numerous distractions and secondary tasks to purposefully direct their efforts toward truly significant undertakings, achieving grand results in key areas. The great thinker Niccolo Machiavelli once expressed a profound thought: "He who wishes his will to be obeyed must possess the ability to give clear and well-considered orders." A person cannot effectively lead others if they cannot discipline and direct their own timeframes, life energy, and available resources. It is impossible to lead the masses if there is a lack of self-control and the ability to manage one's own actions and aspirations. The principle of protecting one's own resources. The fifth principle to consider concerns the strategic application of virtues. The aim of this discussion is by no means a call for heartlessness. No one suggests that fundamental qualities such as compassion, integrity, and generosity should be entirely rejected. The essence lies in using these virtues as a powerful tool, a kind of weapon applied with surgical precision and at precisely the right moment to achieve the greatest effectiveness. A blade left to gather dust on the wall cannot protect anyone, but that same blade in the hands of a skilled warrior at a crucial moment can save an entire nation from ruin. A person's own kindness should operate in a similar fashion. When you offer assistance, your actions should be driven by a clear purpose. When you demonstrate compassion, its expression should be strategic. When you show generosity, it should lead to a specific, predetermined outcome. Consider a vivid example. Instead of spreading your efforts thin by offering insignificant help to everyone, focus on providing substantial support to those who truly need it and whose role is significant. Instead of being indiscriminately agreeable to everyone, it is more advisable to show exceptional goodwill toward those who are truly important. Rather than mindlessly agreeing to every proposition, you must firmly and purposefully approve only those initiatives that align with your own aspirations and objectives. Such a strategic approach to virtue brings three undeniable advantages. First, the assistance provided gains far greater value because it is not ubiquitous. Instead, it becomes a rare and therefore particularly significant act. Second, you are truly able to initiate deeper and more meaningful positive transformations because your attention and efforts are concentrated in specific directions. Third, others feel greater respect for such a person, recognizing their selectivity and thoughtfulness in actions. One only needs to look at the gallery of the most revered historical figures and leaders. Martin Luther King Jr., for instance, by no means showed leniency towards injustice. On the contrary, he resolutely and powerfully opposed it, advocating for equality. Mother Teresa, in turn, did not aim to encompass every single person on the planet with her help. Her efforts were intensely focused on providing support to the most destitute and needy. All these outstanding individuals were undoubtedly kind people, but their kindness was deeply strategic. They purposefully applied their virtues as a powerful tool for significant transformations, rather than as a means to win universal favor or to please everyone. Pleasing everyone is, by its very nature, an impossible task. How can this principle be put into practice in real life? Before agreeing to any request or commitment, one is advised to ask themselves three key questions that will help assess the situation and make an informed decision. 1. Does it align with their personal values and overarching goals? 2. Can they fulfill it without subjecting themselves to excessive exhaustion or burnout? 3. Will the requester genuinely appreciate their efforts and show due respect for the work done? If the answer to even one of these fundamental questions is no, it's essential not just to say no. It's important to formulate a refusal politely, yet unyieldingly and firmly. Conversely, when one does decide to agree, their actions should be wholly directed towards the complete and unconditional fulfillment of what was promised. Maximum effort should be exerted, striving to create tangible value and make a truly significant contribution. Only with this approach does every yes acquire genuine meaning. The assistance provided will be reliably etched in memory, and the generosity shown will foster strong loyalty, not merely a sense of debt or obligation. Niccolo Machiavelli, a great thinker of the past, once uttered words that still make us ponder. A given promise was a necessity of the past. A broken word is a necessity of the present. His profound insight was the realization that, in the real world, sometimes fulfilling obligations to one person inevitably means breaking them to another. At times, showing kindness and care towards one's family requires demonstrating firmness and principle in relationships with colleagues. Protecting one's own dreams and aspirations may lead to disappointing those who seek to use others' time and resources for their own benefit. Thus, strategic virtue is not a manifestation of selfishness. as it might appear at first glance. It is, above all, a matter of effectiveness and expediency of actions. This approach, characterized by effective kindness, is the most conscious choice. Point 6, the illusion of gratitude. There is an observation that can forever change one's perception of the fundamental nature of human relationships. Gratitude, unfortunately, is temporary. This statement may sound somewhat painful, but it reflects a harsh truth. The services rendered to people, the help provided, and the sacrifices made for others all have an expiration date in human memory. Repeated acts of kindness and service eventually cease to be perceived as gifts, transforming instead into obligations. What initially elicited fervent expressions of "thank you so much" gradually morphs into a silent "you owe me this," and then under certain circumstances even escalates into a reproach. "Why didn't you do it?" Consider a classic example. Someone helps their neighbor move. The neighbor naturally feels incredibly grateful. If 6 months later they need help moving again and you respond again, the neighbor is certainly still grateful, but their enthusiasm is noticeably less. The third time help is needed, the neighbor simply expects it. And when the fourth time comes and they face another move, they don't even bother to ask. They just assume help will be provided. If, by chance, you can't help, you suddenly find yourself cast as the bad guy, despite all your previous generosity and responsiveness. These are the deep mechanisms of the human psyche. People adapt to constant benevolence. They begin to take it for granted. Exceptional kindness gradually transforms in their minds into an ordinary attitude. Ultimately, what remains in their memory are the specific benefits and advantages gained from the interaction, not the sincere acts of kindness that were extended to them. This behavioral pattern is observed everywhere, encompassing personal relationships, professional activities, friendships, and family ties. An individual whose willingness to agree seems boundless becomes the object of universal expectations, where a yes is perceived as inevitable. The faithful and unfailing helper is automatically nominated as the universal solver of all difficulties. And when this person finally dares to set personal boundaries or utter a firm no on, they are met with a reaction as if they have committed an act of betrayal, undermining universal trust. The more steadily and consistently a person demonstrates their benevolence, the more their goodwill depreciates in the eyes of others. The more open and accessible they position themselves, the less unique and special their willingness to help becomes. The more generously they give without asking for anything in return, the more firmly it is ingrained in the minds of others that their giving incurs no cost or sacrifices for them. This phenomenon is nothing less than the illusion of gratitude. There is a common misconception that multiplying good deeds will lead to increased appreciation from others. However, in reality, such a strategy often leads to the opposite effect. People become less grateful, as their expectations for further good deeds only grow. Paradoxically, those who show the most gratitude are often precisely those who have received help least frequently. Conversely, individuals who take others' help for granted are typically the main beneficiaries of the most regular and generous manifestations of support. This behavior by no means indicates inherent human malevolence. It merely confirms a fundamental truth: people are simply human, and they, quite naturally, tend to adjust their expectations and perceptions based on accumulated personal experience. Understanding this psychological reality in no way advocates for a complete abandonment of kindness or willingness to be helpful. On the contrary, it merely points to the need for a strategic approach to your good deeds. It is necessary to establish clear and unshakable boundaries. At times, it is advisable to make your help conditional on certain circumstances or mutual obligations. You should allow others to experience firsthand what it is like to be without your constant support and ability to solve their difficulties. The great thinker Machiavelli once expressed a profound thought: men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see, but few can feel. Indeed, others perceive current actions and deeds far more clearly than they retain memories of past merits and expressions of kindness. Past good deeds, unfortunately, tend to become invisible, as if dissolving into oblivion. It is the current, present actions that serve as the measure by which one is judged in the moment. People pass judgment. One strives to create a lasting impact. The seventh principle states, outcomes prevail over intentions. The world judges people by their achievements, not by their deepest motives. One can possess the purest heart on earth, and intentions can shine like gold. However, if actions do not lead to desired and tangible results, all these internal qualities lose their significance. The history of humanity does not remember those who merely harbored good intentions. It honors those who managed to achieve their goals and bring them to fruition. Allow me to pose a counter question. What would you prefer? To be remembered as an exceedingly kind but largely ineffective person, or as someone who perhaps seemed stern but in reality made the world a better place? Most tend to choose the former as it seems safer, but they overlook one important detail. To be remembered solely as nice is tantamount to being completely forgotten. There is, regrettably, one undeniable truth. Sometimes genuine kindness requires actions that, in the moment, may not appear entirely benevolent. Superficial niceness often creates only fleeting comfort, while making difficult and sometimes unpopular decisions fosters a long-term, profound impact. A parent who disciplines their child is not evil. On the contrary, they act wisely, teaching the child crucial life lessons that will serve them in the future. A teacher who gives strict grades is not cruel. They prepare their students for the harsh realities of the world, where demands are high. A boss who sets high standards for their team is not an unreasonable tyrant. They help their employees become stronger, more competent, and more effective. True kindness, therefore, lies in results, not in the external attractiveness of actions. It aims to create positive outcomes, not merely to evoke pleasant feelings. It is at this point that many good people make a mistake. They focus on being liked by others instead of being effective in their actions. They prefer comfort over personal growth. They choose temporary peace instead of long-term, significant positive changes. But here's the bitter truth. If a person does not get the desired results from their kindness, it means their kindness is insufficient. They are just nice, and that is a completely different concept. Nice people avoid confrontations. Good people actively resolve conflicts, finding constructive solutions. Nice people tell others what they want to hear, avoiding uncomfortable truths. Good people tell people what they truly need to hear, even if it's unpleasant. Nice people maintain the current state of affairs, the status quo. Good people initiate positive changes, moving the world forward. The world is full of nice people who achieve no significant results. What the world truly lacks are good people who achieve real, tangible results. One must focus on results. Machiavelli once famously stated, "The end justifies the means." However, this assertion is not a call to commit bad deeds for noble goals. On the contrary, its true meaning is that even the best intentions lose their value if they do not lead to tangible positive results. People do not live in someone's heart. They encounter the real consequences of others' actions. Thus, it is necessary to realize genuine kindness requires not only compassion, but also courage. It obliges one to prioritize results over external display or the desire to be liked. This virtue demands that one stop asking, "Will they like me?" and start asking, "Will this make the situation better?" Ultimately, people will not remember one's intentions. They will remember what was built, what was changed, and what was left behind. One must focus on results. Point 8, legacy and survival. Now let's turn to what truly matters, how one will be remembered and what one will leave behind. History does not honor only those who were simply good people. It honors those who managed to survive adverse conditions, stood firm in the face of difficulties, and transformed their efforts into something truly great. Ponder this for a moment. Can you name 5 exceptionally agreeable historical figures? Probably not. However, you can likely easily recall those who initiated long-term changes, regardless of whether their character was always accommodating. Steve Jobs, for instance, did not earn a reputation as a mild-mannered individual. He was demanding, a meticulous perfectionist, and often difficult to communicate with. Yet his creations transform the lives of billions. This is not a call to be malicious toward others. It is about being remembered for the transformations one accomplished, which is significantly more valuable than being forgotten for excessive complacence. Here's what most people don't understand about legacy. You cannot leave a significant positive mark on the world if you don't manage to endure long enough to create it. And survival, whether in business, personal relationships, or life itself, requires far more than just being nice. It entails demonstrating intelligence, strategic thinking, and at times, a certain toughness. Indeed, the kindest hearts in the world will not be able to help anyone if they are crushed by those who shamelessly exploit them. The most generous souls will not be able to give anything if they deplete all their resources too hastily without calculating their strength. And the most honest people will not be able to convey the truth if they are silenced by those who prefer to live in and uphold lies. People often prefer lies. First, an individual must ensure their own survival. Only then will they gain the opportunity to thrive. And only then will they become capable of creating the legacy they aspire to. Such a path implies the necessity of safeguarding oneself in order to have the strength and means to protect others. It means developing one's own capabilities in order to uplift others. It means gaining strength in order to lend a hand to those who are weak. Such behavior should not be interpreted as a manifestation of selfishness. On the contrary, it is a thoughtful, strategic approach to life. There is not an ounce of cruelty in it, merely prudent caution. The essence is not to abandon kindness, but to preserve and multiply it so that it can truly impact the world and bring about genuine change. If one looks at those who create long-term and truly positive changes on a global scale, it becomes evident that these individuals are by no means spineless or pliable. They do not pursue the goal of pleasing everyone they meet. They are immune to the fear of having to utter a firm no, to define clear boundaries of what is permissible, and to take responsibility for making the most difficult and sometimes unpopular decisions. These individuals possess a deep understanding. Being truly kind is by no means synonymous with manifesting weakness. On the contrary, it means possessing sufficient strength of spirit and character to choose to do good precisely when it is of paramount importance. As the great thinker Machiavelli once remarked, it is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. In essence, he indicated that true respect carries greater weight than momentary affection. Influencing events and people surpasses, and the results achieved are more significant than fleeting feelings. One does not need to choose between demonstrating kindness and possessing strength. One is perfectly capable of combining both of these qualities. Moreover, one should strive for the harmonious development of both. However, if circumstances compel a choice, paramount importance should be given to strength. For it is strength that grants the individual the real ability to be kind when it is truly necessary and effective. Weakness, however noble the intentions, merely transforms one into a helpless victim of circumstances. Throughout this narrative, many aspects have been examined. However, the author would like to conclude with the most important lesson everyone should learn. Kindness, devoid of strategic thinking, represents the most insidious and dangerous trap an individual can fall into. It leaves one defenseless against those who seek to exploit. It mercilessly depletes one's vital energy and resources until literally nothing is left to offer or give. Furthermore, such kindness generates unfulfillable expectations that one cannot maintain and ultimately prevents one from realizing the truly positive impact one sincerely wishes to have on the world. However, kindness, bolstered by strategy and sound judgment, transforms into a powerful weapon for survival and gaining genuine influence. It becomes an effective tool capable of generating real and significant change. It is precisely this kind of kindness that lays a solid foundation for a life and the formation of a legacy that truly possesses value and meaning. It is now clear what a steep cost unthinking, blind kindness can exact. One comes to understand why boundless generosity can lead to an insidious trap, why sincere gratitude often fades and disappears over time, and why even the best intentions, unsupported by tangible results, prove utterly futile. More importantly, however, individuals now know how to transform their own kindness from a potential vulnerability into an unyielding strength, how to exercise kindness wisely and strategically, how to provide truly effective assistance, and how to achieve significant, lasting results. Each individual now faces a momentous decision. Will one continue to adhere to outdated methods of kindness, expressing it thoughtlessly, without any established limits, until such an approach leads to complete exhaustion or even ruin? Or will one choose a new path, a path of kindness founded on strategy, effectiveness, and true strength? Thus, we are confronted with a pivotal question that will undoubtedly determine each person's future course. Will one allow kindness to become a source of weakness, or will one manage to harness it, transforming it into a powerful driving force? The choice, without a doubt, rests with the individual. However, all the necessary knowledge is now available to make a truly wise decision. One's kindness is not a mark of weakness. On the contrary, when applied skillfully and strategically, it transforms into one's greatest, most unyielding strength. This approach advocates for mastering precisely this kind of strategic kindness. It is crucial to remember, in a world where wolves roam, one should not resemble a defenseless sheep. Instead, one should become a true shepherd, someone capable of protecting their flock, not through weakness or naivety, but through deep wisdom, thoughtful strategy, and an unwavering strength of spirit.